Welcome everybody. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can authenticate your command line tool using the OAuth protocol. As the provider, we are going to be using the Microsoft Identity Platform. And if you're not familiar with OAuth, check the description, check the playlist. I have many videos covering OAuth in great detail. With some big cloud providers deprecating the device code flow as deemed as insecure in some situations, if you're writing a command line tool, you need to be able to adapt. We're going to be using OAuth code flow to authenticate our command line tool. My name is Anton, welcome to the Raw Coding YouTube channel. Don't forget, if you're enjoying the video, leave a like and subscribe. Starting off with the program CS, we have a root command and we're adding two commands. One for authentication, the other one is to call an authenticated endpoint. If you're unfamiliar with what is happening over here, I am using a library provided by Microsoft that is system.commandline. Currently it is in beta and it is only available as pre-release and it is only available on .NET 6. So if you're using this example and you're coding things up, make sure when you create your project you have .NET 6.0. Otherwise, you can use another library that is pretty much like this called command line utils. For the two handlers, auth is empty, and that's primarily what we're going to be building up. The second one is call handler. We build up an HTTP client, we grab an access token from the persisted access token, and we're making an authenticated request to get information about the access token holder. Now, the persisted access token service is going to be saving and loading the access token from the user profile path, which means your user folder. If you're on Linux or Mac, this is your home folder. If you're on Windows, this is C, users, and then your username. We're going to be storing the token in .myaccessToken file. There is a component missing from here, but we're going to be adding that a little bit later. Before we start building anything out, let's go to the Azure portal and you want to search for app registrations. On here, you want your own application and you want to create a new app registration. You name it whatever, I'm just gonna call it CLI, the default option over here, and I will select public client native. The redirect URI is going to be HTTPS, localhost, and 5000. Actually, this is gonna need to be the callback path, so I'll call it auth-cb. I'll copy the whole thing and register the application. Here, I'm just gonna note the location of the client ID. Let's go ahead, pop over here, and now the question is, we have our client configuration, where do we put it? Now, in all my previous videos, we've been building C# clients which are web-based clients. Nothing needs to change here. We are on a desktop. Command line tool goes on a desktop. Let's open up our CS_proj file and change this to be a web SDK for developing web applications. Your command line tool is not becoming the web application. It is just using a little bit of it. So web application create builder. We will spin up a local web server so we can obtain an access token. This is going to be var builder. In the builder services, we can add authentication. And now the story becomes really familiar, where this is going to be the default authentication. Here we're going to be configuring client ID. I'm going to copy that across in just a second. We're then going to have the authorization endpoint, token endpoint, and the callback path. Callback path, I copied it across and I just want this bit here. For the client ID, it's the one that I noted over here. Let's grab it, put it here. And now for the endpoints, Microsoft is actually being very convenient by giving you this endpoints button, and we want the two on the top here. So authorization and token endpoint. Let's grab the first one, place it over here in the authorization bit. Token endpoint, grab it, place it over here. And now we're almost ready. We are going to encounter some errors, but we'll resolve them once we'll see them. To the builder, we're gonna call build, and this is gonna give us our app. We're gonna add one single endpoint. So app map get, this is just going to be /, and in here we will result challenge, new authentication properties. I'm just gonna do something along the lines of this, and a new list. So we're just forcing an authentication with the default schema. We're then going to start our application asynchronously. We don't want to block here. And we will also create a semaphore. So let's just call it sem. This is going to be a semaphore slim. We're going to ask for 0 count. And we're going to call sem await async and await here. This is going to make sure that the command or our command line tool is not just going to end. We're going to be sitting there and waiting until the authentication flow is going to complete. Now, because this is version 6 of .NET, we want to actually register use authentication middleware. The last couple of bits that we need is actually setting the URL. For this, we can go to the web host and say use URLs, where we're going to say HTTPS and say local host 5000. We can copy this address, and at the bottom here, actually before we await async, we process start and then a new process start info, file name, supply the URL, and also use shell execute to true. And the piece of code over here is going to open up the browser with this URL automatically. So whenever we run this application, it's going to open up. Let's check this out. I'm going to open up the terminal and run the application with the auth command. This has started my server, and we are going to see an exception. It's basically saying client secret option must be provided, right? We are a public client. We cannot hold a secret. The command line tools will be distributed. Now, let's stop this because we are not going to be able to do anything until we resolve this issue. There are two ways that we can resolve this issue. We can either change AddOauth to be add OpenID Connect, and technically speaking, that would be more correct because we're authenticating and AddOauth should never been used for authentication. However, in the interests of learning, we're not going to be using add OpenID Connect because I'm going to be creating tutorials in the future about OpenID Connect. We are just going to hack the AddOauth middleware a little bit because the auth protocol actually allows public clients, and this AddOauth service is just a little bit crap. So first of all, why is the validation happening? If we look inside the auth options, we're going to find the validate function, which is throwing around the client secret. Let's go ahead and get rid of this validation. We're going to grab the auth options class. We're going to go to the bottom and we're going to say public class auth options without secret. And we're just going to inherit from auth options. Now, because we kind of know what we're doing, we're just going to override the validate function, not the one with the schema, and we will remove the call to the base. Now, if you still want the validation because, you don't trust yourselves that you can put a couple of strings over there, you can open up the auth options and copy the validation logic across into here. Additionally, what we're going to do, we're going to go back into auth extensions. We're going to grab the auth handler with the auth options, and we're going to create our own handler. So public class auth handler without secret. And this is going to be this handler. We're going to pass the options without the secret. And we're going to implement the default constructor. Additionally, and you're going to see why, we're going to override the handle remote authenticate function. And for now, we're just going to leave it as is. Going to make sure that I name my class correctly. Let's grab the options. Come back here. When we add auth, first let's supply our options, and then we'll supply the handler. And there we go. If we open up the terminal, rerun the application, the authentication automatically initializes. However, we're just not requesting any scopes. So let's go to API permissions, and it was user read that I want to request. So in here, I will specify scopes. Let's add user read, and let's just make sure that it's all in one line. We're also going to add stuff like OpenID and email, and I think profile, just to be sure. Let's restart the application. Here's the login screen. Let's accept, and we get a 500 on the auth callback. Now, the error that we're getting is that there is no authentication that was specified in the default sign-in schema. If you know anything about the AddOauth handler, is that it is trying to sign in us with some kind of cookie. And if you watch my previous videos, you are already initiated. You know that if we go to the auth handler, the handle remote authenticate function that we have overridden over here, on the auth handler, if we're going to go to remote authentication handler, we're going to see it called here. And if we make sure that this function returns handled, we're not going to go down here in this logic and try to authenticate with the cookie. This is just going to exit over here. This is a good place to actually short circuit our authentication. First of all, we're gonna await here, make sure we make this asynchronous, and let's return handled. Additionally, we can make sure that we're not leaving the browser on this URL. Let's go ahead and create success. Let's take the body of this, remove. We're gonna ask for the semaphore, and once we land on success, we're going to release. And this is actually going to take the application and stop async, okay? We're gonna finish the server here, and then we're gonna go into options over here, events, and just like before on ticket received, we're gonna have context. And by the way, just in case you're not sure, we're gonna go into auth handler, right? So this auth handler that we're overriding, inside the handle remote authenticated async function, we have the exchange code. So once we got the code and we're exchanging it for tokens, down here, create ticket async, this is where we have a chance to hook in and listen for the access tokens. This is why I'm overriding this event. I'm gonna go into context. I'm gonna grab the access token. Let me double check the event. It's creating ticket. So this is received. So on creating ticket, in this context, we should be able to find the access token. Now we're just going to do the same thing. In the persisted access token that we have over here, we can actually take this class, we're going to go into auth, and we can register it with the service container over here. So services, add singleton. Let's go ahead, register this here. And this can actually be transient. It is not that important. And now the persisted access token can, in the constructor, accept data protection provider. Okay, and now we can actually make sure that this token is being stored securely. So when we take the provider and we create a protector, let's say CLI access token protector, we'll take protector and we'll say that this should protect the access token. We're then going to go to load async and do exactly the same, but after reading this stuff. So await var content. This is going to be read all bytes async, and we can return protector unprotect content. This is returning a bytes array, so we want to go to encoding UTF-8 get string out of all of these bytes. So let's pass this over here and remove the space on the end. There we have it. Now inside auth, we can go to CTX because we've already registered the service over here. We can find our HTTP context. This can have a request services. We can get required service, and this is going to be the persisted access token. Let's say PAT equals, and then on PAT, save async. We can pass the access token. Fix up the semicolon, we'll return task completed task. And because after uncreated ticket async, we're gonna get redirected to success straight away, and this can actually return success here, semicolon there, I was gonna say exclamation mark. And in order to actually get there, we wanna CTX HTTP context response redirect / success. And now the beauty of having our project be this web project, if we go to the call handler, which is currently breaking here, we can create our own container, which is on this container, we can add transient and do exactly the same. However, now we can easily just add data protection, which is going to be injected into persisted access token when we go to get the service. So on the container, we want to build a service provider. Here we can get required service and get our persisted access token. And this is exactly how you build command line tools, right? Again, this can be PAT, grab PAT here, put it over here, and we load async, and this should work just fine. The service collection can be created in your program CS class, and the instances with the handlers can be surfaced from that container as well. There we go. And we're successful. So that was pretty quick. If we come back here, we can see all of the redirects that have happened, and we get quite a bit of logging. You can actually remove all of this if you go into auth and you go into builder and you go to logging and you say clear providers. So if you've set this all up and you no longer want the noise in the command line, just remove all of the providers from the server and you shouldn't see any of this anymore. Now, since the application has actually ran, I can try look for the my access token in the home directory and filter grab by .my. So there is the .my access token. Well, cat, and this is not the real access token. Remember that we have actually encrypted it. which is pretty cool. So now instead, let's run .NET run call. So after running, we get a big fat exception. If you're running on Windows, you might be all right. If you're running on Mac like me, you will need to configure the location for your data protection provider. Let's drop down the terminal. We're gonna go to the call handler where I'm adding a data protection provider, and I'm gonna say persist keys to file system. This is not the best. On Windows, I think it's using something called dpapi or whatever. The proper solution would be to generate and save a certificate on your file system and then use that certificate to protect the key. However, that's gonna add quite a bit more time to the video, so we're not gonna be doing that. I'm gonna be copying the path for the user profile folder. We can put it in here, and actually we'll need to give this new directory information where I'm gonna place the path. I'll call the file CLI encryption key. Instead of user profile folder, you can actually use local application data, which should be a little bit better. Now you can create an extension method for this, but let's take the persist keys to file systems and let's actually take the add data protection. We're gonna go to auth and we're gonna place it over here. So builder, services, and all of this malarkey over here. Import missing references. We're gonna open up the terminal. We are going to re-authenticate. Been successful. Let's come back. Let's call. Another big fat exception. So let's say that we want to set the application name. This is going to be my CLI app. Grab the set application name, go into persist access token, or actually call handler. Place this over here as well. Open up the terminal. Again, re-authenticate. Close these. That has been successful. Let's call again. And there is another explosion yet. So we've correctly set up the application with the encryption key and then also the application with the encryption key on the temporary server side. So something may be wrong in the persisted access token. I'm gonna blame it on the fact that we're reading bytes and we're unprotecting bytes. And what I'm trying to save here is actually a string. So instead, let's read all text over here. Unprotect now should return a string, so we want to replace the get string over here. Let's open up the terminal, re-authenticate. Actually, I probably didn't need to. But anyway, let's call now. And there we have it, some authenticated data. The moral of the story here is that you basically want to take your command line tool and turn it into a local web server. And that is how you authenticate your command line tool locally. This will be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe. If you have any questions, leave it in the comment section. I know some of you may not know, but the comment section can also be used to say thank you or tell me that the video sucks. But better yet, come support me on my Patreon, come get the source code. Very, very big thank you to all of my patrons that are already supporting me. Your help is very much appreciated. Again, thank you for watching the video and have a good day.